Der nächste Vortragende wird unser Referent aus Frankreich sein. Er ist Chefredakteur der Revue Défense, nationale. Das Gleiche, was für Husi angekündigt gilt halber verhindert ist zu kommen. Er hätte gerne alte Kameraden getroffen. Ich habe es ihm auch weitergeleitet. Er lässt sich entschuldigen, kann das nicht wahrnehmen. Ich erinnere mich an einen seiner ersten Sätze im Strategieunterricht, als wir als Hörer bei ihm auf der Schulbank gesessen sind. Er hat gesagt, militärisches Denken beginnt mit der Strategie. Strategie beginnt auch mit maritimem Denken und die entscheidende Literatur zu strategisch weitgeistigem Denken ist in Französisch und die beste davon wird in der Regel nicht nach Deutsch übersetzt. Wenn ihr also Strategie lernen wollt, lernt Französisch. Das war einer der Gründe, warum das Sprachinstitut einen lästigen Hörer in meiner Person mehr bekommen hat und es bewahrheitet sich. Wir sind auch eingedenk, dass Friedrich der Große eigentlich noch so schon einer der erste Feldherr modernen Zuschnitts mit militärwissenschaftlicher Bildung im deutschsprachigen Raum oder auch in Europa war, der so sehr frankophil war, von französischen Ideen, Ideen der Aufklärung, Ideen der wissenschaftlichen Beschäftigung mit dem Krieg durchdrungen war und damit auch französisches Denken in die Entwicklung der operativen Grundidee im deutschsprachigen Raum Einfluss gehalten hat. Wir wissen, dass zum Beispiel auch Clausewitz davon beeinflusst war, eben über die Lehren von Jomini. Jomini selbst Schweizer, aber eigentlich der französisch-strategischen Denke zugehörig. Ein ganz interessantes Detail am Rande. Wir sprechen vom Takt des Urteils, vom kriegerischen Genius, von all diesen Dingen, die ein bisschen ins Metaphysische reichen und reihen in diese Aufzählung den Begriff des Coup d'œil ein, der eigentlich im regulären Französisch ja nichts anderes als ein Augenaufschlag ist. Das heißt, die Konnotation mit göttlicher Funke ist überhaupt nicht gegeben. Ich bin dem nachgegangen, wo das herkommt. Im schweizerischen Französisch, dessen Jomini mächtig war, heißt es Augenmaß. Und Clausewitz verwendet es im Sinn von Augenmaß. Das heißt, man müsste also sogar da schon sprachwissenschaftliche Studien anschauen, um drauf zu kommen, warum Coup d'œil doch nicht irrtümlich oder aus schlechtem Französisch kennen, sondern offensichtlich hat Clausewitz das schweizerische Französisch von Jomini rezipiert. Ich darf auch an Madame de Staël erinnern, die so sehr vielen auch emanzipationsanhängigen Damen ich gerne als Literatur vorschlage, weil so in ihrer Person eigentlich die erste wirklich inhaltlich geistig emanzipierte Frau auf diesem Kontinent sogar das Missfallen Napoleons erregt durch ihr freigeistiges Denken, ist dann über die Schweiz emigriert und hat in ihren Deutschlandreisen ein sehr ergreifendes Buch über die deutsche Philosophie geschrieben. Ich glaube also, dass das, was man über den deutschen Idealismus in der Welt weiß und kennt, zu einem guten Teil auf Madame de Staël zurückgeht. Und das auch ist französisches Denken. Und letztlich schreibt auch Lennart Souchon in seinem Buch, dass eigentlich der Begriff der Strategie im heutigen Verständnis erstmalig von einem Joly de Mézeray im späten 18. Jahrhundert französischer Herkunft geprägt worden ist. All das zeigt uns, wie wichtig gerade der französische Einfluss, die französische Denke zur Strategie ist. Und wir freuen uns, Herr Oberst, auf Ihren Vortrag. Bitte schön.
Es ist eine große Ehre für mich, hier zu sein. Ich bin für das erste Mal in Wien. Trotzdem habe ich viel gelesen über Österreich seit Jahren. Also ich freue mich mit diesem Besuch. Aber ich habe eine spezielle Verbindung mit Wien, aber nicht in einem militärischen Gebiet, sondern in einem musikalischen Gebiet. Mit meiner Frau wohnen wir in circa Paris, in Bougival, in der Haus, wo Herr Georges Bizet Carmen geschrieben hat und gestorben ist. Er starb im Juni 1875 und Carmen war viel kritisiert in Paris. Im Oktober, Carmen war gespielt hier in Wien und es war ein großes Erfolg. Die Oper Carmen hat ihre internationale Karriere in Wien begonnen. Und gestern war ich in einem Opergeschäft, um CD zu kaufen. Und ich habe Carmen gehört. Also danke Wien für diese spezielle Verbindung. Leider ist mein Deutsch nicht so gut, also ich werde in Englisch sprechen, es wird einfacher für mich. So, to start, I have to apologize because my British colleague has explained the RUSI and its role in the British defense policy. It's more or less the same for the Revue de Défense nationale. So I have two options. So I cancel my presentation because I will repeat the same, or I will continue. So I will continue. So last month, our Ministry of Defense has written and published a short book with a significant title, Qui est l'ennemi? Where is their find? So who is the enemy? And the answer of our defense ministry is without doubt, today our enemy is Daesh. So it means evolution in our strategy and its presentation, because since the end of the Cold War, officially France had no enemy, only threat and risk, like most of the European nations. And now we are fully engaged in an hybrid war overseas, for example in Africa or in Syria and Iraq, and in our national soil. So my presentation is about how the Revue de Défense nationale, RDN, it's our acronym, has highlighted the evolution of the French defense policy and strategy from its beginning, from World War II, to the actual period. In fact, the RDN was created to supporting the strategic research, the perspective about defense, the doctrinal debate, and the education of officers. It's still the same mission today, including, and it was not the case in 1939, a multinational dimension. So we are a kind of, or a hybrid think tank, and the great difference with the RUSI is that I have no permanent member or expert. I will explain it further. So, my first part will be an historical approach. So why the Revue de Défense nationale? So with the destabilization in Europe due to the Nazi Germany and the communist USSR, France tried to reinforce their military capabilities at the end of the 30s. In 1936, the Institut des Hautes Études de Défense Nationale, IHEDN, was created in Paris in the École Militaire. And its first director was the Admiral Raoul Castex. The aim was to reinforce relations between the military elite and high-ranking civilians from diplomacy, policy, economy, in order to explain defense and to have a better understanding of this sensitive question. 3 years after, so in 1939, it was decided to create a monthly journal dedicated for defense, strategy, and international affairs. And of course, Amiral Castex, the director of the Institut des Hautes Études de Défense Nationale, so was selected to be the chairman of the editorial board. And for this time, the chairman of the editorial board is always a high-ranking general or admiral. Today, this is the Admiral Koldefy, who was deputy chef of our defense. The idea was to have a mix between high-ranking officers, civilian experts, diplomats, and academics written in the Revue de Défense nationale. And it's still the case today. And to avoid the subordination to the national chain of command, the military authorities created an association, the Comité d'études de défense nationale, which is independent and which is in charge of the RDN. And this association, the Comité d'études de défense nationale, continues today with this organization. It means that the RDN is independent from the chain of command, but the RDN is not a critical friend, but a comprehensive friend of the defense and of the chain of command. And in the first publication in 1939, so a very tense period, so it's still very exciting when you read the archive. So we have the first 3 papers were written by General Gamelin, who was defeated a few months later, Amiral Darlan, and the most prestigious French military chief at this time, Maréchal Pétain. Of course, due to the disaster of June 1940, the publication was suspended. And the publication has restarted in July 1945 with the same goal, and the first article published in the new edition was a paper from Colonel Charles de Gaulle about the Belgian problem. But at this time, the global situation has changed. France, despite her participation with the Allies, had lost an important place on the international stage and had to rebuild her own military forces, of course, with the American support. Lessons learned of World War II took a central place in the RDN. The trauma from the defeat in June 1994 was, of course, present in all the mind. From 1945 to 1962, France has to face 2 main conflicts due to the decolonization process, with the war in Indochina and then in Algeria. And most of the articles at this time were dedicated to this sensitive question: how to elaborate a Cohen doctrine, how to understand an irregular enemy. You understand well that those 2 topics are still very interesting today. And of course, at this time, how to build our own forces engaged at the same time in Cohen operations overseas and against the Soviet Union in Central Europe. All those questions were central in the Revue de Défense nationale during this period. And reading today all those papers published on those issues is essential when you are involved in a lessons learned process. Of course, the Cold War and the elaboration of the doctrine concerning the dissuasion nucléaire have taken an important place in the Revue de Défense nationale. The fall of the Fourth Republic is due to the Algerian crisis and the lack of political situation despite tactical success against the rebels. When General de Gaulle came back to the power, he engaged 2 main decisions. The first one was ending the war in Algeria, giving the independence to Algeria with all the political consequences. And the second main topic for General de Gaulle was to restore the French sovereignty through the nuclear deterrence and our autonomous national responsibilities. Some words about nuclear deterrence, which take a very important part in the Revue de Défense nationale. Studies and research have started sooner, in fact just after the defeat in Dien Bien Phu in 1945. At this time, the RDN was a main actor with the publication of the most important papers describing our nuclear doctrine. The advantage of the RDN was independence and the possibility to present different options on nuclear deterrence and open the debate. Today, all the archives about nuclear deterrence in the Revue de Défense nationale are digitized today and are on internet in our website. And it gives a really very interesting opportunity for academics to study the evolution of the French defense policy about nuclear deterrence and how we have explained our nuclear policy. In 1964, so the first nuclear component takes a permanent alert, and in 1966, General de Gaulle decided the withdrawal from the military chain of command of NATO. From the military chain of command and not from the alliance. And the RDN has contributed to explain and clarify this major decision, why we stay outside the chain of command, but at the same time, we are still clearly an ally. During all these years, RDN was the only way in France for publishing papers on defense. In fact, war studies or defense policy were not admitted in the French academic world for various reasons. And the first one is a divergent conception of the legitimacy on strategic research and a political opposition between the university and the defense due to the past, and particularly due to the use of torture during the Algerian war. It means that at this time it was really impossible for an officer to go in uniform to make a presentation in a French university. With the election of the President François Mitterrand in 1981, the most important evolution had been the national consensus of defense policy. For members of the new socialist government in May 1981 were communists, but they were quickly marginalized, and President Mitterrand was deeply hostile to the Soviet Union. Remember the Euromissile crisis and the speech of the President Mitterrand at the German Parliament in 1983, les pacifistes sont à l'ouest, les missiles à l'est, to support the deployment of the American Pershing missiles in West Europe. And all the questions, all these debates were published in the Revue de Défense nationale. After 1989, one of the most sensitive questions has been the model of armed forces. The French tradition, the French culture, was based on the conscription for male. Female were only volunteers. During the first Gulf War, President Mitterrand had decided to send only professional troops. So the door was open for debate, and a few years after, the conclusion was the suspension of the Service National and, of course, the professionalization of our entire defense. So, the second point of my presentation is about the strategic debate in France and how the RDN played a key role. So, as I said, we have a consensus about the defense policy. There is no big difference between the left and the right wing due to the organization of our chain of command. In our constitution, the chief of defense is the president. And all the presidents of the Fifth Republic have played a role with a great interest. Of course, General de Gaulle. But all the presidents have understand that the role of chef des armées make a difference with their partners. For example, this is the case, so President Hollande discussed defense policy directly with an American counterpart, and the Parliament has a secondary role in this affair. So, what are the most important questions today? Nuclear deterrence, which is still the core of our policy for more than 50 years. Second point, we are a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations. We are a worldwide actor despite the decreasing of our military capabilities. And about NATO and EU, it's a permanent debate which is still open. So since 2009, we went back to the NATO chain of command, and the Revue de Défense nationale has published a lot of papers on this topic. In 1996, President Chirac decided to stop the conscription. The consequences were more complicated than previous, with a drastic reduction of the size of armed forces. And another question was how to maintain a strong relation between the citizen and armed forces. The RDN has contributed to analyze all the implications of that main evolution. Just to give you consequences which was not plain, we have reduced the number of barracks due to the dissolution of numerous regiments, air base, and military installation. And in the area of Paris, we face today difficulties to lodge troops engaged in the Operation Sentinelle against the terrorism. We need to rehabilitate obsolete installation, and of course, it's very expensive. To support our defense policy, France has published 4 white books. The first one was published in 1972 about the national autonomy of decision based on our nuclear deterrence. In 1994, the white book was dedicated to analyze the end of the Cold War and to organize a new defense, considering that we had no more enemies in our European border. And behind the words, the idea was to save money by reducing the defense spending. It was a time of peace dividends. And the conclusion of the strategic evaluation was the end of our military organization based on concrete, 2 nuclear submarines at sea. Today we have only 1, and the float was reduced from 6 to 4. In 2008, President Sarkozy, who was inspired by the American neocon, published a third white book with 2 main ideas. First, the full reintegration of NATO, done in Strasbourg in 2009, and a drastic downside of the forces, minus 50,000 soldiers. The discussions were tense in the RDN during this period with policy. And we have to admit that the relations between the President Sarkozy and the armed forces were not enthusiastic at this period. In 2012, the last white book was an evolution of the president. The downsizing of forces was planned at minus 33,000. So it means in 10 years, minus 80,000 soldiers. And the first idea of the new socialist government was to reduce our overseas operation, especially in Afghanistan. But in January 2013, the situation was dramatically out of control in North Mali. Then the President Hollande decided to engage quickly our forces to fight Islamist rebels who tried to reach Bamako. The destabilization of Mali, a failed state, should be a nightmare for France. The second Malian city is not in Mali, but is Montreuil on the Metro Line 9 in Paris. So you can imagine the consequences of the fall of Bamako. And the first engagement decided by President Hollande was a turning point in his defense policy and his perception of armed forces. And papers have reflected this turning point. With the terrorist attacks in January 2015 against Charlie Hebdo and the Jewish community, a first evolution was the reduction of the downsizing from 33,000 to only 14,000. And with the attacks, the 13th of November against the Bataclan, it was decided to frozen the downsizing and to increase the number of soldiers of the land forces to 66,000 to 70,000 soldiers. It means to decrease in the other branches to find those 11,000 posts. The consequences of all this strategic evolution is to do like Great Britain, and we will publish every 5 years a new white book in accordance with the election of a new president. This is an evolution, and it's a normal evolution, and the Revue de Défense nationale was in favor of this evolution to avoid the idea that we have to change because we have a new president. With a stabilized white book every 5 years, it will be better for our defense. So, our military model is reflected by all our publications in the Revue de Défense nationale. The first one is a full spectrum defense, from the nuclear deterrence to the presence of land forces against terrorism. But it means we have reduced some capabilities to maintain all those capabilities. Just two small examples. For example, we had in the past one amphibious logistic regiment, and now we have only one amphibious logistic battalion. We had one railway engineer regiment. Today we have only one engineer company dedicated to railway operation. Of course, a professional defense since 1996. We recruit only professionals, but at the same time we have maintained reserves, and the RDN has produced recently some papers about the evolution of our reserves, including discussion about a kind of national guard. So the debate is still open. And a powerful defense industry. Just last year, so 15 billion euro last year only with export. And the RDN works with industrials, not to present advertising, but to have a dialogue on perspective and to explain, for example, the constraint. Because sometimes officers have difficulties to understand the industrial constraints, and industrials have to understand what we need for our defense. So, the RDN is a key player today. So 5,000 writers have published during those 76 years. We have published 80 papers from our Ministry of Defense since 1960. It means, so every Ministry of Defense published in the Revue de Défense nationale, because it's the best way to give his policy. And last summer, so I was in holidays, and I was looking at all the Ministry of Defense of the Fifth Republic. And so I was afraid because Jean-Yves Le Drian has not published until last summer. And I sent an email to the cabinet of the Minister of Defense, and I said, former colleague from the right wing, Hervé Morin, has published 4 articles, and you haven't published. 1 week after I received the first article. So you see how the RDN is powerful on this topic. We have 4 publications. So the monthly review, which is the most prestigious, with 10 editions yearly. And I have a yearly program planning established with the French MOD, including representative of the different chief of staff, directions, agency and service. So, I will come back. I apologize because it's in French, but here you have the next program. For example, the Warsaw Summit in October. So the defense, European defense, in September, lessons learned from the operation in Suez, a British French operation in 1965 in Suez. And so this list was established with our main partners. And of course, one of the difficulties will be next year with the French election, and in February I will publish papers from the most important candidates to the presidential election. It's on open source, so if you want to have this program, so I will give this program. And to complete about the yearly program, this summer, so the publication of the summer is dedicated on only one topic, and the topic will be the Sub-Saharan Africa. It's very important for us. And next year, for the topic will be Russia and the Russian environment. But I have also, in every monthly review, to work on a regional approach. So you see, for example, in October, Brexit or not Brexit, a strategic question about India, North and Baltic, regionalism in Europe, China, Mediterranean and Maghreb, Iran, Egypt. So you see what are the French geopolitical preoccupation. So for the monthly review, we are more or less 3,000 copies monthly. Paper copy and of course on internet. I came back, sorry. Here we have our website. On our website, you have the monthly paper, and we have what we call the Tribune. Every week we publish specific and short papers on strategic news. So, for example, this week, a paper about the crisis in Yemen, a paper about military equipment, and we have extensive archive, and we publish papers coming from our archive. The only precaution is, so I have to be very vigilant because I have young students working in the Revue de Défense nationale, and sometimes so they propose old papers, and I have to be sure that the writer was on the good side, on a good position. To give you an example, we have published papers from officers who were, for example, a very interesting paper in October 1939 about Navy battles during First World War. A very exciting paper. But the writer was executed at the end of Second World War due to his collaboration with Germany. So I have to write, okay, this guy was executed. So it's only a precaution because I'm responsible of all the publication. So the advantage of the Tribune is to be able to publish in a very short delay papers about strategic news. For example, we will make a test of a new test of our nuclear missiles from our submarine. In the next days, I will publish a paper in case of success, so I hope so, but the day after, I will publish a paper explaining what we have made these states, what are the goals, what are the aims of the use of nuclear submarines. And so this is, for example, on internet about Yemen, and the writer has spent 3 months circa the Yemen area. So, for example, publication coming from our archive, Cuba and Fidel Castro from 1967, Marshal Tito and his policy. So you see, it's really interesting, not only on a historical point of view, but also when you are in a lessons learned process. And I published every month a letter only dedicated, only by subscription about defense actuality. So, and of course we are on internet, on social network, for example, with Facebook, with more or less 2,000 daily views, and it's very interesting to see the statistics. So 50% are men and 25% women. But I apologize, we have no connection from Österreich and Deutschland. Why? Because we publish in French, and this is perhaps one of the problems. So, General hat gesagt, dass in französischer Strategie liest. Und für uns, wir müssen unbedingt also in Englisch schreiben. Aber es ist eine Schwierigkeit und ich brauche Geld darüber. Aber so, we will integrate English abstracts from Juli for our next publication. And so the new evolution of the Revue de Défense nationale will be an academic paper, so that will start this year, a 2-year edition with a peer review process by a scientific committee. So, some words about academic papers. One of the permanent difficulties is the lack of war studies in the academic field in France. Defense was long not an interesting domain for research, and relations, as I said further, were not good and were tense and frozen for decades. And as I discussed with General Millota this morning, the divorce started with the affaire Dreyfus at the end of the 19th century, and with two camps. The first one, the anti-Dreyfusards, including the conservative, the Catholics, and the army, and the Dreyfusards, including the left-wing, socialist, Republicans, and the intellectual. And the divorce has continued, and particularly after World War II, and the divorce was reinforced by the Algerian War and, of course, involvement of armed forces to fight rebels and the use of torture by troops. So, and with the General de Gaulle, the definition of our national strategy was made at the highest level of the state. It meant by the president himself and his military staff. So Parliament was not linked to the definition of our policy. And on the other side, for the university, the freedom and independence for researchers were more or less considered as incompatible with the loyalty needed in the defense area. And it's still a difficulty. Today, the strategic research is organized into different levels. The Ministry of Defense has created for last year, the DGRIS, Direction Générale des Relations Internationales et de la Stratégie, in charge of international affairs and strategy. And for example, our defense attaché depend from the DGRIS. Yesterday, they depended from the SHOD and the chain of command from the SHOD. Today, this is from the DGRIS. And in 2011, we united different research centers from the defense about sociology, history, in only one institute, and the idea was, in fact, to save money. And the IRSEM, Institut de Recherche Stratégique de l'École Militaire, is located in the École Militaire, and is today the main defense think tank in the Ministry of Defense. Of course, we have also think tanks outside, for example, the IFRI, which is closed from the Ministère des Affaires étrangères, the IRIS, and the FRS, Fondation pour la Recherche Stratégique. But what role and place for the think tank and the think tankers? The think tankers are not fully accepted by the university. So in France, you need to have your academic career, and not fully recognized as expert by officers. So the debate is continuing. And in the academic world, there is no war studies like in Germany, like in Great Britain, or like in the United States. There is no war studies department. International relations are not a specific matter in the defense, in the academic world in France. You have history, political science, international law, philosophy, but no international relations. So we try to reinforce relations and cooperation between defense university. This is one of the aims of the IRSEM. And IRSEM, for example, receive young researchers, and we published in the Revue de Défense nationale their research. And for example, they could make doctorate at the École Militaire. And the scientific value of the IRSEM is controlled by a board with a mixed team, including academics and high qualified officers. And I'm in this board. And we have, last year, established a convention between the University of Paris-La Sorbonne and the high military education staff to reinforce cooperation with doctorate for the officers, a monthly seminar, and common publication in the Revue de Défense nationale. So, I try to explain the specific role of the RDN as a partner for our defense, with a balancing approach. I'm not the official speaker of our MOD, but I'm not a fully independent media. I have 5 persons in my team. 3 are from the Ministry of Defense, and 2 are paid by the Revue de Défense nationale. So at the same time, I have to have more contracts and to have more money to develop the Revue de Défense nationale. And have to contribute to the debate and give the best contribution to explain our defense policy, but also to prepare the future and explore new way of thinking, as you said, with the next planning program. We have established partnership with other nations, historically with Morocco, because they speak French, and the French model is their own model, Spain, and African nations like Senegal, with regular exchange of papers and publication. But of course, I'm open for other partnership, particularly with NATO or European Armed Force. So, leider habe ich nicht genug Deutsch gesprochen. Es tut mir leid, aber es wird für mich eine neue Herausforderung für morgen. Wir erhöhen unsere Beziehungen mit Österreich und Deutschland in dem militärischen und strategischen Gebiet. Also danke für Ihre Geduld.